But the Bible tells the story of a prophet who became known for announcing only disasters. At first glance, a story like this might seem strange or even off-putting. After all, who would be interested in the story of a prophet who only brought bad news? What kind of message of hope could come from someone like that? However, what many might see as a bitter and pessimistic man was, in fact, someone with a deep purpose and a message that reflected courage, faithfulness to God, and a constant fight against falsehood, especially during a time when many prefer to hear pleasant prophecies. And this reality of seeking messages that please still persists today. In this video, you will learn about the impressive story of this prophet and understand why he became known for prophesying only evil. If you're familiar with the story of the kings of Israel in the Old Testament, you probably heard of Micaiah, the prophet in question. The name Micaiah is a variation of Micah, which comes from a Hebrew expression meaning, who is like the Lord. This name doesn't refer to a single person in the Bible, but rather to several, with Micaiah, the prophet who confronted King Ahab of Israel, being the most notable. He became particularly known for announcing only disasters to the ears of the king of Israel. According to the biblical account, Micaiah was the son of Imlah, though little is known about his family or the exact context of his calling. In the northern kingdom's court, Micaiah was known for prophesying only doom, but this didn't mean he was a bitter or pessimistic person. On the contrary, he was an authentic prophet who didn't choose what to communicate, but simply delivered what God commanded him. King Ahab's discomfort with Micaiah's prophecies was not due to flaws in the prophet's character, but because his words exposed the idolatry and injustice in the kingdom of Israel. Micaiah's message, though harsh, was, in reality, an announcement of divine judgment against a king who stubbornly followed a path contrary to God's will. Ahab's refusal to listen to Micaiah reflected his willingness to ignore the voice of the Lord. This becomes even more evident when we observe that Ahab preferred to listen to prophets who aligned with his desires and kept Micaiah away from the court. The fact that Micaiah was reluctantly brought before the king shows how unwelcome his ministry was in Israel. However, the biblical records make it clear that Micaiah was a man of integrity and faithfulness to God, who did not bow to the pressures of royal power. Like other prophets of his time, Micaiah opposed idolatry and religious syncretism that were spreading through Israel and Judah, and his loyalty to God brought serious consequences, such as imprisonment and threats to his life. To better understand Micaiah's message and his prophecies of ruin, it's necessary to understand the historical and political context of the northern kingdom during the reigns of Ahab and Jehoshaphat. After Solomon's death, the kingdom of Israel was divided into two: the northern kingdom, ruled by Jeroboam, and the southern kingdom, which remained under the lineage of David. This division not only split the kingdom, but also created social, religious, and political tensions. Ahab, one of Israel's most famous kings, married Jezebel, a Phoenician princess, and introduced the worship of Baal in Israel, consolidating idolatry and persecuting the prophets who remained faithful to God. On the other hand, Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, was recognized as godly but made political mistakes, such as a lie with Ahab by marrying his son to Ahab's daughter. This alliance between the two kingdoms had dramatic consequences, especially during the war against Syria. At one point, Ahab decided to go to war against Syria and sought Jehoshaphat's help. Before the battle, Jehoshaphat suggested consulting God's will, and Ahab gathered about 400 prophets who guaranteed victory. However, Jehoshaphat, suspicious of the unanimity of these prophecies, asked for a true prophet of the Lord to be consulted. It was at this moment that Micaiah came into play. When he was called, Ahab expressed his disdain for him, saying that Micaiah always prophesied disaster. When Micaiah finally spoke, he announced Israel's defeat and Ahab's death in battle, also revealing a vision in which God allowed Ahab to be deceived by a lying spirit. This moment created great tension, and after hearing Micaiah's message, Ahab tried to use a tactic to protect himself during the battle, disguising himself so he wouldn't be recognized. However, Micaiah's prophecy was fulfilled. A randomly shot arrow struck Ahab, and he died. Jehoshaphat, who was also involved in the war, almost lost his life, but was saved by God's mercy. This episode confirms Micaiah's faithfulness to the divine message, which came true despite Ahab's attempts to discredit it. The story of Micaiah teaches us several lessons. First, It reminds us that the true prophet of God is rarely popular, as their message often confronts uncomfortable realities and calls for repentance. The truth of a prophecy lies not in how it is received, but in its consistency with God's word. Secondly, the story of Jehoshaphat warns us about the importance of spiritual discernment and acting according to it. For even though he sensed the falsehood of Ahab's prophecies, Jehoshaphat still made an erroneous decision by following the king into battle. Finally, this account also leads us to reflect on God's sovereignty, who allows deception as part of his judgment on those who reject the truth. In conclusion, the story of Micaiah teaches us valuable lessons about faithfulness to God, spiritual discernment, and the importance of seeking the truth, even when it's not what we want to hear. His example reminds us that, as prophets in our own journey of faith, we should not fear adversity or rejection, but rather remain faithful to the message God entrusts to us. The pursuit of truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, will always bear fruits of justice and redemption. If you've been moved by this story and want to continue learning more about biblical lessons, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any of the content we prepared for you. See you in the next video.